Good morning, guys. Today we have lesson 3 in our math. Title is finding any part of our distance formula. You guys remember our distance formula? It's right behind my head. Remember, we have our distance equals our rate times our time, all right? So you guys are familiar with working with that, and you guys are also familiar with solving equations and working with algebra. So that's what we're kind of combining today. We're combining our distance formula and algebra that we could solve for our unknown value, all right? So let's just start reading at the top of our page. It says, when traveling, the distance you go depends on how long, or the time, you travel and how fast, which is your rate that you travel. This relationship is the distance formula that you guys have seen before. Right here, we have our distance equals our rate times our time. However, it's not always the distance that you need to calculate. Sometimes you already know the distance, but want to know the rate at which you travel. Other times you want to know how much time a trip took, or it will take. As long as you know the values of 2 of the 3 variables in the formula, you can calculate the third value. Using the equation solving skills you already know, here are the examples of the 3 possible combinations, all right? So they give us letter A, B, and C of 3 different possibilities that we can use our formula and solve it algebraically. So we're going to go over each one of these individually, all right? All right, so our first one, letter A, it says, on one Saturday, Tyler went on a bicycle trip that lasted 2.5 hours. He averaged 15 miles per hour. How far did he travel? Identify the things you know and don't know from the problem, all right? So we know that it took him 2.5 hours. So we know the time was 2.5 hours. We know how fast he went. We know the rate he went, which would be 15 miles per hour. So all we have to do is fill in with our formula. This is a familiar problem. You guys have done this. We have our distance equals our rate, 15 times 2.5 hours. And we're going to come up with, if we would go over here, if we would take 15 times 2.5. I'm not going to take the time to do it, but we would come up with 37.5 miles for our distance, right? So Tyler traveled 37.5 miles on his bicycle, right? That's problem 1, solving for our distance, our unknown number, all right? All right, now for our next problem, letter B, it says, while traveling, the Carver family passed a road sign which said that Chicago was 250 miles away. They reached Chicago 4.25 hours later. What was their speed per hour? So again, we need to identify the things that we know about the problem and the things that we don't know. We know that the distance was 215 miles, right? They needed to go 215 miles. We know the time it took to get there was 4.25 hours. So what we do next is we fill in with our formula. So we know that the distance was 215 equals we don't know our rate. So that's what we're going to solve algebraically to figure out, all right? So we know that we have our rate times 425, all right? Now, so this is an equation you guys know how to solve algebraically, all right? So we need to do both sides. If we have our variable over here, remember we need to get our variable by itself. Remember, if we have a number, if we have our variable right beside our number, it means the same as 4 times. So now, remember, we have to undo it, so we have to do the opposite of that, all right? So we're going to divide both sides by 4.25 hour. Now, we have our variable down here by itself. Cancel each other out. Now, all we have to do is come over here and divide both sides. Divide that, right? And remember, we have to move our decimal point first. So our decimal point's there. We're going to move it there. and then we can divide, all right? I'm not gonna work that out on the board, but if we would go, I have my calculator here, if we go 215 divided by 4/4 equals, all right? So they're gonna come up with this. So they just rounded it to 50 and 5 6/100ths. 50 and 56/100ths, all right? So that's problem 2, all right? Oh wait, actually, they rounded it to the nearest tenth, so it'd be 50 and 6/10ths, all right? So the Carver family's average speed was 50 and 6/10 miles per hour, all right? Let's move up to our last problem, letter C. If a jet averages 550 miles per hour, how much time would it take to travel 2,475 miles? All right, so let's identify the things we know about our problem, all right? So we know that the jet traveled at 550 miles per hour. It traveled at 550 miles per hour. That's our rate. That's how fast it went. How much time? So we want to know how much time it would take to travel 2,475 miles. So our distance is 2,475. So we do not know the time. That's what we're going to try and solve algebraically to figure out. So let's fill in with our formula. We know that 2,475 is our distance. We know our rate is 550. And our time is unknown. So we have our unknown variable here, which is our time. And remember, we have to do the opposite to get our variable by itself. So this is multiplying. Now we have to divide both sides by 550. 550. And then we have our variable left. And we come over here, and we do the same thing. 550, 2,475. All right, we divide that, and then we will be coming up with 4.5. So at 550 miles per hour, it would take a jet 4.5 hours to travel 2,475 miles, all right? I'm just gonna quickly do this up here. 2,475 divided by 550 equals 4.5, if you guys can see that, all right? So we can use our distance formula as long as we know the values of 2 of the 3 variables, all right? So these are all unknown numbers. As long as we know the value of at least 2 of these, we can solve algebraically and come up with our answer, all right? That's our new part for today. You guys have 3 questions in your new part. Set up your formulas. Also, make sure you show your work when you do these, all right? Make sure you write out your work and go ahead and do that, all right? I'm just looking over our lesson. And I think we are good. All right, guys. Hopefully that makes sense. You guys have a great day. See ya.